And from the bottom of my heart, warm welcome to all of you, our guests, our friends, our parents, our teachers, and our dear students. Thank you for joining us tonight in this very special celebration in honor of our 5 young essay laureates, winners of our 2021 Asian American Student Essay Contest. What does it mean to be an Asian American? We ask that question every year. Stereotypes about us say that we're quiet, but that doesn't mean that we're submissive. Stereotypes say that we don't speak out, but that doesn't mean that we don't have thoughts, feelings, and principles. That we don't make waves, that we don't rock the boat. But remember, still waters run deep. We've been historically and very recently overlooked, erased, and unfairly scapegoated. Now we're being, or some of us are being, beaten, slashed, and maimed. But not for long, and especially not tonight, because the youngest among us are speaking up eloquently and brilliantly. And we at BAFFIN like to offer this safe space to them. They know words matter, that they can hurt or they can heal. We hope the power of the words of these young writers tonight can help you understand Asian Americans better. Today, we also welcome our keynote speaker, Jun Lee, back to Brookline. Well, he's in New York, but back in Brookline. Welcome back, Jun. And we're very, very happy to have our special guest, Dr. Linus Guillory, soon to become our superintendent. We welcome you too. Before we start the program, I just wanted to make sure we thank some of the people without whom we won't be having this event. Some of them have been with us for years, very loyal in their service and also their generous support. Caitlin, can you please pull up slide number 1? So let me introduce you to our wonderful judges. And I'm going to start from clockwise from the top left. Sharu Swami, Chris Chanya-Sulkit, Caitlin Starr, Alicia Shu, Giselle Farrow-Quigbo, and John Hodgman. Our judges receive these essays anonymously. They don't know whether the writer was male or female, what grade they are in, and they go through it like very, very seriously. Sometimes it makes us choke. I mean, I'm not a judge, but I have to set down sometimes these essays, put it down and take a breath because they make me choke. They're very, very moving. Thank you for your service. Caitlin, slide number 2, please. And of course, we can't do this without the support of many of our partners and our sponsors. Most of them have sponsored us every year. We have a newcomer this year, which is a restaurant called Pho Viet's on Commonwealth Avenue, which I hope you will frequent. Brookline Booksmith, Brookline Frames, the Brookline Community Foundation, John Hodgman, and Dr. Robert Goon, plus the partnership of Brookline Interactive Group and Lloyd Jeleno and Caitlin Starr at the Town of Brookline Office of Diversity, Inclusion, and Community Relations. So without further ado, thank you very much, sponsors. So without further ado, I pass the baton to Chi Chi Wu, fierce advocate of justice and all things Asian American, one of Brookline's 2021 Woman of the Year. Congratulations, Chi-Chi. Fresh off her win last night as Brookline new town meeting member. Chi-Chi Wu.
Thank you, Shulan, and thank you for an introduction. You didn't need to introduce me. All I'm doing is introducing BAFFIN to people. So this is usually the point in the program where I introduce the Brookline Asian American Family Network, tell you a little bit about BAFFIN. We were founded to support Asian and Asian American students and families in the Brookline schools. We've been around, started in 2009, got really active in 2011. And usually I would tell you about the Lunar New Year event, which is our signature event. This year it was online. I'm really hoping February 2022, it's in person because it's a wonderful event. I've mentioned that this essay contest is also another signature event, and to thank Shulan for the incredible amount of work that she puts into this essay contest. I mean, it's unbelievable. So thank you, Shulan. And I'd also tell you about our listserv and our Facebook page and urge you to join them. And I still urge you to join them. I'll put information in the chat in a little bit. And I'd also usually in this program, give a bunch of shout outs to people because we'd be physically in a room and I would say there is. So I can see in the attendee list a few dignitaries. I see Brookline High School head of school, Anthony Meyer. I see several members of the school committee, Jennifer Monopoly, Susan Diskoff, Helen Charlupski. And I see Deputy Superintendent Casey Miller, who has been incredibly supportive. She's the top Asian American in the system, and she's been incredibly supportive of our community through what has not been a usual year. So I'm not going to just give our usual speech because we've had to pivot this year. It's been a very hard year. Obviously because of the pandemic, we're here on Zoom, but also, as you know, because of the wave of anti-Asian racism and hate crime and violence that has occurred across the country, and that has been very difficult to deal with. And so we here at BAFFIN and in Brookline have also been dealing with this and trying to work our darndest to address this. With this very generous support of the Brookline Community Foundation, we've engaged in a bunch of projects. A video curriculum project led by the extraordinary Alicia Hsu and Ashley Ang, Max Murphy, Miles Leong, Emery Mufti, and Kyle Makaluxi, who have put together a video curriculum project to address, for viewing at Brookline High School, to address anti-Asian racism and to provide more history about the Asian American experience in high school. And now they're working on one for middle school. Alicia and Ashley have also been involved in another extraordinary effort to put displays in each of the elementary schools about notable Asian Americans, including some of the people in this Zoom. Such as Jun Lee and Shulan. We've posted some of them on our Facebook page. So that's another reason you should join our Facebook page and listserv, or just go to the schools and look at them. They're beautiful. We've also sent a list of concrete steps to both the schools and the select board on how to better support Asian Americans in Brookline, because we are, and I keep saying this every time till you're sick of it, but everybody in Brookline should know we are 17% of the population, 20% of the schools. And we should demand the kind of services and attention being the largest racial minority in Brookline. And one of the things we've demanded is more about Asian Americans and Asian American studies and dealing with Asian American racism in the schools, because ultimately education is what's going to combat anti-Asian racism, right? Knowing more about our community, more about our history, more about what we've experienced. And so this event is also critical to that. I mean, I wish, Shulan said 100 people registered. I wish it was 1,000. I'm hoping 1,000 people are watching on Big, because hearing the stories from these students, hearing these essays, they are so incredibly moving. And, they present our community as three-dimensional, not as stereotypes, as complicated, flesh and blood human beings, and the entire community here in Brookline should hear that, because that's how you combat anti-Asian racism. So I'm going to turn it over now to said extraordinary Alicia Hsu to introduce the essay award winners.
Thank you. Thank you, Chi-Chi. Thank you, Shulan. What an amazing night. I would like to welcome everyone. Good evening and welcome. This is a night really for hugs, and I'm sad that we can't give them, but I've given everyone a big, huge hug. Hi, June. Hi, everyone. So my name is Alicia Hsu, and I am one of the judges of the 2021 Asian American Student Essay Contest. It is a true honor to be here with you today during Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month in this all too familiar virtual space at a time in this nation's history when our stories, rich and vibrant and powerful, weave us together in strength and defiance, in heartache and solidarity. To each of the students who shared your story, who took the time and the risk to write and submit an essay, this year especially, we celebrate you. You are courageous and vulnerable, deeply thoughtful, warriors and poets of truth. You have given voice to what it means to be Asian American today, and we honor all of you and your stories tonight. Thank you for your frank and eloquent insight, your humor and your wisdom, and above all, your brilliant leadership in the unrelenting movement we are all part of today. You paved the way for all of our stories to be told, our stories to be heard, to be amplified, and to be celebrated. And we walk proudly and loudly behind you and beside you. I'd also like to take a moment to recognize the family members and the teachers of our essayists here tonight. One of the many things I miss the most about this evening when we are together in person, aside of course from the delicious cake we always get from Chinatown, is the chance to watch your proud, beaming faces when these essays are read out loud. We honor all of you as well, for we know that tonight's stories and storytellers have grown and thrived in large part because they have been nurtured by your love, your strength, and your stories. So family members and teachers, we cheer for you. Can we all give it up for you? Thank you. So this is my favorite part of anything I do all year long, is now to introduce our essayists. So it is now my honor to introduce the recipient of this year's Creativity Award, Lilia Burton Patel. Lilia is currently a junior at Brookline High School and a graduate of the Runkle School. Born in San Diego, Lilia attended Explorer Elementary Charter School there from kindergarten to the 2nd grade. Lilia loves creating origami, visual and other 3D art, cooking. She loves music, singing, composing, playing instruments, and Lilia loves video games. When writing her essay entitled Intertwined, Lilia was surprised at the different memories that came up when she began to think about her Aji. She doesn't tend to grieve openly, and this dedicated exploration of her memories of Aji helped her better understand herself. Lilia's essay, Intertwined, is dedicated to Aji and to her father. During this time of racial reckoning for Asian Americans, Lilia is grateful to be surrounded by the thoughtful, courageous activists in APAC, our high school's Asian Pacific American Club. She feels her friends' pain and the danger they face and mourns the senseless loss of life. Lilia hopes to take part in changing our community in ways both big and small for the better. She would like to thank Ms. Shorter and Ms. Shulan for always pushing us to have the courage and drive to share our stories. Thank you for telling your story, Lilia. So on behalf of BAFFIN and the town of Brookline, I present Lilia Burton Patel with the 2021 Creativity Award for her outstanding essay, Intertwined. It is a gift to the senses, crafted with elegance. Congratulations, Lilia.
Thank you, Ms. Shu. Hello, everyone. My name is Lilia Burton Patel, and I will be reading my essay, Intertwined. Being Asian American means having connections. It means having family across the world, books in your home with stories your friends don't know, the feeling that you can belong in two places at once. My life is half India, half America, but it's not as simple as that. Being half Indian doesn't mean your life comes cut cleanly in two. It's more like two trees that grow together, twisting and intertwining their trunks until they make something unique. My trees have always grown together, since I was born. Though I've always lived here, and my culture is strongly from the US, I'm still peppered with the spices of India if you lean in close. My first food was rice and dal. My basement is filled with Diwali candles, and my house with Ganeshas and hand-worked Indian metal. But the most important connection of all lives within me. Every year, ever since I was born, I've gone to see my grandmother, my Aji, in India. In a house of peacocks and monkeys, of rangoli and chapatis, she sat surrounded by gifts and wrapped in a mosquito net that she opened wide with her smile of welcome. It is a double life, and for me, a harmonious one. The trips of camel rides and climbing a giant fig tree that will rest forever in my heart contrasted greatly with my other life, the one I lived most of the year round. And though it was difficult, with jet lag and illness, I wouldn't have missed one of those trips for the world. I lost my Aji a year ago on her birthday. 75, and then she was gone of an unexpected heart attack. For over 2 decades, she had been partly paralyzed from a stroke, and as the years of my childhood progressed, so did her body's weakness, until she could no longer welcome my brother and me in her front yard with the traditional garland and greeting. Every time we left, I said goodbye. I never knew which time would be the last one I saw her. I didn't get to talk with her often in between visits, but I talked with her the day she died. She called to ask me about my choir concert that day. Of all the days for her to call. It was only hours before we heard the news. She found the right time 10.5 hours away to be able to say hello. Though I haven't heard from her since, it still feels like I could pick up our phone at any moment and hear her voice. I miss my Aji, but most of all, I'm scared. I'm scared that the strongest string that tied me tightly back to India has disappeared from the outside world, if not from my heart. This is the first year in my life I haven't seen her, and the first year I haven't been to India. It seems as though when my strongest connection was severed, suddenly all connections stopped. With the pandemic, I can't go to India, and I don't know when I'll be able to again. But besides COVID, I don't know when we'll really be able to go as a family. We still have people there, but no one that pulls us as my Aji did. I'm afraid of losing my connection, of having the memories of dusty streets and honking cars next to cow-pulled carts slip into the hazy memory of childhood. I will fight for my connections, but some things are out of my control. Her house, the place of peacocks and monkeys, rangoli and chapatis, is no longer ours to visit. I don't know when I'll be able to go back and see everything that makes up half of me. All the stories and the places and the food and sounds and smells and stores and loved ones and memories that lie half a world away. I'm afraid that without nourishment, that part of my tree will wither until all that remains is a stump of decaying memories ridden with holes. Being Asian American to me means remembering. It means my connections, those within the heart and those without. They break and form, shifting and morphing throughout our lives. I've suffered a cut. My greatest wish is that my tree will still continue to grow, if slower, with the aid of the soul of a woman who gave me so much of her heart. Thank you.
Thank you, Lilia. Oh, dear. At this time, I would like to introduce the recipient of this year's Content Award, Claire Choi. Claire is a sophomore at Brookline High School and a graduate of the Baker School. Claire's favorite pastimes are reading and spending time with friends. Claire has found Brookline to be a pretty diverse and welcoming place to grow up and does not have a specific time when she felt discriminated against or openly hated for her race or ethnicity. Thinking about what it means to be Asian American made Claire dig deep and open different bottled up emotions in order to write about her personal experience. Claire dedicates her essay, Beautiful Jade, to her family, specifically to her parents, but she dedicates it to her brother as well. During this time, when Asians and Asian Americans are in the news daily, Claire wants to help and push us to become a better world. When I read Beautiful Jade for the first time, I stopped midway through and I started again. This time I read slowly, savoring every word and holding my jade tightly. Thank you for telling your story, Claire, and for inviting us into your journey. On behalf of BAFFIN and the town of Brookline, I present Claire Choi with the 2021 Content Award for her outstanding essay, Beautiful Jade. Congratulations, Claire.
Thank you so much for that, Licia. That meant a lot. So this is my essay, Beautiful Jade. I used to resent my mother for choosing my email username for me. Knowing I was too young to choose my own, my mom came up with something short and simple to remember. The head of it consisted of my Romanized Korean middle name, Kadim, and some numbers followed right behind its tail. When she showed it to me, I instinctively scrunched my nose, wincing at how awkward and out of place my email looked compared to all the normal emails that my traditionally American friends had. I soon learned that nobody understood me when I told them my email. To save myself from the embarrassment of repeating apparent gibberish in my mother tongue to them, I defaulted to spelling it out, hoping they understood. When the first person asked me what my email meant, I felt the blood rush to my already rosy cheeks and stuttered answering that simple question. I became defensive and blamed the username on my mom, pleading how she was the one who made it, not me. I desperately wanted to erase my email account and to disassociate myself from such an alien name. One that even Koreans had trouble with because not only is it one letter away from a more common name, but it also bizarrely resembles the Korean word for iron. My name wasn't perfect in Korea, and even less so in America, which made me want to shove it into a box and keep it hidden in the dark, unreachable corner of my closet. That evening, I ran to my mom in the kitchen. As I was on the verge of tears, stumbling over hurried and unorganized words about how I wanted to change my name. I begged for an explanation of why she chose a name so strange in Korean and even stranger in English. I protested for a new email, a new name, an American name nobody would question. Slowly stirring the simmering pot of kimchi jjigae, a stew unabashedly and unmistakably Korean. She looked at me with heartbroken eyes, telling me to sit down at the table. After measuredly turning the stove off, she followed me as I tried to swallow the lump building up in my neck while expecting a sparring match of wills. "Hi, Choi," she said, as her warm voice permeated the room along with the ineffable scent of lacto-fermentation and briny whiff of the sea emanating from the stew. She explained how our last name meant high, high as the mountains, high in class, and high like the sky. It meant we were noble, dignified, and poised. She added that it also meant we were stubborn, joking that it was the reason why my dad was so. She then explained my given Korean name, the one I didn't like, comprised of 2 characters denoting beautiful jade. She chose the name because it meant I was beautiful and elegant, yet firm and strong-willed. She said she found beauty in my name and that she wanted her only daughter to be the same. She implored that no matter how much I like my American name more, I should still find the importance and grace implied by my Korean name. This name is a reminder of my Korean heritage, like the jade necklace that hangs on me as I navigate my way through America. After seeing I was no longer in self-imposed shame, my mom went back to the kimchi stew and relit the fire beneath. I sat there, watching the blaze and reflecting on what my mom just said. Beautiful jade. Something was so mesmerizing and captivating about those 2 words when said in English. Slowly, it dawned on me that maybe, just maybe, my name in Korean wasn't ugly after all. Over time, I grew to appreciate my name because I saw it from a different lens besides the American one. It was no longer some burden dangling around my neck, as it helped me reconcile who I truly am and should be proud of being, Asian American. My name is one reason to immerse myself in the Asian American community with which I stand tall with pride. Particularly in recent times of increased hate and assaults against Asian Americans, I feel the pressing need for this community to come together for support and action. To those ends, Asian Americans should be called to stand in solidarity with beauty and strength. I will too, just as my name signifies. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. It is now my pleasure to introduce the recipient of BAFFIN's Content Award, Audrey Seeger. Audrey is a freshman at Brookline High School and a graduate of the Edith C. Baker School. Her favorite hobby is digital art. Audrey was surprised at how easily their ideas were able to flow out and transform into a cohesive body of work in just a couple of days of writing. Audrey dedicates their essay entitled Our Filing Cabinet Minds to her mom, who always pushes them with whatever Audrey takes on, including this essay. At this time of racial unrest, Audrey feels sad and frustrated that it has come to the point of hate crimes and physical violence for Asian struggles to even be recognized. With wild wisdom, Our Filing Cabinet Minds strikes at the fundamental limitations and the limitless potential of humanity. Congratulations, and please keep writing, Audrey. On behalf of BAFFIN and the town of Brookline, I present Audrey Seeger with the 2021 Content Award for her outstanding essay, Our Filing Cabinet Minds.
Thank you so much. And thank everyone else who is here. I'm Audrey Seeger, and this is my essay, Our Filing Cabinet Minds. I've always been a solitary person, but the isolation from social life that the pandemic has pushed upon us has granted me too much time to stare into empty space and entertain my philosophical musings to the fullest. Though these thoughts range from the possible existence of supernatural forces to the ever-persisting debate on whether or not water is wet, A contemplation that always seems to return to the forefront of these one-sided discussions is the question, what is it with humans' tendency to simplify everything? As a statement, this is indisputably true. From the shorthand used to take notes and compose a text message, to the not-to-scale disclaimers for that mathematical diagram, to the meticulous organization of filing cabinet folders. We always feel the unconscious need to compress, change, and categorize things for them to make sense to us and save effort on our individual part. We see something, we simplify it, we mentally slap a couple of labels on it and tuck it away in our filing cabinet brains, even if that something doesn't fully match any of the pre-existing categories. This simplified system of thinking gives rise to one of today's global issues. Untrue and harmful stereotypes result in the mass generalizations of groups of people. Individuals are given reputations they never asked for. Some are blamed for crimes they didn't commit. Some are held to unrealistic standards. And others are deemed inferior, though they have never been granted the chance to prove themselves. All are judged on the basis of race, gender, sexuality, ability, what they cannot control. And where do I come in? Into which drawer, which crisp manila folder am I stuffed into? Growing up, my worldview was extremely limited. I was only aware of the cabinet's outline. I thought everyone was like me and shared the same experience. I was therefore stunned to discover that most of my American peers had never tasted xiaolongbao or scallion pancake, didn't have to travel to the other side of the world to visit their grandparents, and ate rice with a fork. But I was even more astonished to discover that I also didn't fit in with those who did share my Asian experience, because I wasn't Asian enough, because my hair is a couple shades too brown, my nose too triangular, my eyes too wide. I could speak about 3 phrases in Chinese, ate ham and cheese sandwiches for lunch, and wasn't really in touch with much of modern Asian culture. For white people, I feel shunted into the Asian folder. For Asian people, into the white one. For me, I'm in both folders, and neither at the same time. I call myself half and half, an east-west smoothie, cheese and crackers on a platter. For me, that is satisfactory, until I begin to question my validity as either race and the carefully constructed image crashes to the ground again. Because no matter how I choose to see myself, if others can only see me as one or the other, there is no room in their vision for my in-between. I cannot choose how others see me, nor where I will be filed in the cabinets of their minds. So maybe it's time for me to return to the lesson of an old cliche picture book moral. Be yourself and ignore anyone who says you're anything else. If I am confident in my own identity, then I can fully embrace my heritage and culture, especially on my mom's Taiwanese side. I'll never be able to completely disregard where I land in the filing cabinets of others. However, I believe this is an idea that shouldn't be disregarded. The first stage of change is awareness. And if we recognize people's tendency to categorize, we will then be prepared to knock down the clunky cabinet and replace it with a graceful spectrum, and open people's eyes to the true limitlessness of human diversity. Thank you.
You are all so smart. It's so heartfelt. I just want to follow you. I will follow you anywhere you lead, all of you. This year, for the very first time, we are excited to present the BAFFIN Activist Award. This year's recipient is Tina Lee. Tina is a freshman at Brookline High School and a graduate of the Pierce School. Her favorite hobby is baking. As an ardent foodie, Tina loves to share the joy of delicious food with others. She has been surprised and delighted by the power of food. Without realizing it, Tina has been using this universal tool to unite people who might otherwise be divided. Tina dedicates her essay, A Piece of Durian Puff, to her parents. For without them, she wouldn't be here in the United States, or here sharing her story with us tonight. In recent weeks, Tina has been attending rallies to amplify Asian American voices. She co-organized a community vigil so that more people could understand what it is like to be Asian American. It is unfortunate that we cannot gather in person for tonight's award ceremony, for Tina would have definitely brought us durian puffs to try and enjoy. We salute you, Tina, for your courageous activism, for turning pain into power, for showing all of us how community is grown, and most of all, for telling your story. On behalf of BAFFIN and the town of Brookline, I present Tina Lee with the 2021 Activist Award for her outstanding essay, A Piece of Durian Puff. Congratulations, Tina.
Thank you so much, and thank you everyone for being here. I'm Tina Lee, and this is my essay, A Piece of Durian Puff. No one wants to sit with me during lunch because of my smelly durian puff. I confessed to my parents, opening up about the hurt festering inside me. My family and I had just immigrated from the United States from China, and I started 6th grade at Pierce without speaking much English. Every day, I would have the large circular table all to myself, only accompanied by a crispy, buttery sweet durian puff, notorious for its pungent smell. Meanwhile, I could hear other people joking about how they would know this weird Asian girl ate from miles away, and that only Asians would eat such stinky things. Expecting a warm hug from my mom, I was surprised by her indifferent comment. "Oh, they just never tried it before, Tina." Seeing my bewildered face, she went on explaining that although we moved to the United States for freedom and opportunities, the US wasn't a perfect society either. As an immigrant with foreign accent and a person of color, xenophobia and discrimination were inevitable. What I could do, however, was to start raising awareness of my culture. Encouraged by my parents, I turned my situation around by inviting other international students to come sit with me with their traditional lunches. Although only a few came at first, our durian table quickly became filled with cuisines around the world. Instead of the banal PB&Js, we had Mexican chili with pecan aromas, adorable animal-shaped onigiris in Japanese bentos, and of course, my favorite durian puff. Everyone here put down their prejudice and try each other's lunches to get a taste of their culture. Even some of my fellow white classmates joined as allies, intrigued to find themselves falling in love with my stinky dessert. In the very place of my humiliation and isolation, ironically, I had created a welcoming atmosphere for all to chat, laugh, and bond candidly. Through organizing this international lunch table, I came to a realization that what my mom told me was right. Most inadvertent comments made by my well-intentioned white peers were not out of hostility. They were simply unaware of foreign food, traditions, and values. Thus, we Asian Americans can minimize these racial biases by taking pride in our identity and educating others on our fascinating culture. Although the pandemic stopped my durian table, my mission of using food to unite our divided society continued. I held a COVID-friendly bake sale for Brookline Thrive, a local food assistance program for students. With its demand doubled since last March, people of color in our community were disproportionately affected. After chatting with a Taiwanese immigrant who expressed the pressure of paying rent and feeding her 4-year-old daughter, and being thanked by a Japanese mom for giving her children ready-to-go meals. I was glad that I could use my insignificant force to help our much-needed community. On my bake sale menu, not only were there classic cupcakes and brownies, I also included Hong Kong egg custards, my grandma's special rice puddings, and other traditional Asian desserts I grew up eating. To my surprise, they were widely loved by the majority of my white customers, with my durian puff being a crowd favorite. I sold 700 baked goods, raised over $1,000, and helped fed 200 families at the end. By talking to many of my kind supporters who were interested in trying these foreign food while supporting a good cause, I realized that this global pandemic shouldn't be the time for division and hate. Asian Americans shouldn't be blamed for bringing the virus to the US. Elders living in Chinatown shouldn't be afraid to walk down the streets alone, fearing they will be the next victims of hate crimes against Asians. Trump shouldn't use xenophobic statements like China virus to exacerbate stigma and discrimination against Asian Americans. No one should. Instead, now should be the time for inclusion, unity, and support across racial groups. Not only is our nation facing the COVID-19 virus, we're also battling with the virus of xenophobia and racism. These two pandemics can only end when all Americans, regardless of race, unite together, starting with trying a piece of my durian puff. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. I cannot wait. Next year, we're just going to have durian puffs, no cake. Our final award recipient of the evening is Jackie Gu. It is my honor tonight to present Jackie with the 2021 BAFFIN Award. Jackie is a senior at Brookline High School and a graduate of the Florida Ruffin Ridley School. Jackie loves to try out new food and drink places with her friends. Some of her favorite local spots are Small and Sweet Bake, specializing in Asian-themed cupcakes, and Kimchi Papa Kitchen. I love saying that. She recommends their bibimbap. As a writer, Jackie doesn't typically use a dramatic and heavy style. She usually writes with a lighter and simpler flair. However, Jackie felt that the essence of her story was best conveyed in this more dramatic style, and was surprised at how much fun it was to write this way. Her story flowed easily. It was ready to be told. Jackie dedicates her essay entitled Water and Ink to Lilia Shorter. Miss Shorter has been like a second mother to Jackie throughout high school and has had an absolutely pivotal role in the person Jackie is today. A lot of us feel this way. How about we take a virtual moment to show Miss Shorter some love. Hey, Miss Shorter, we love you. If we were in person right now, this would be thunderous applause. During this time, when Asians and Asian Americans are in the news every day, Jackie wants to ask our non-Asian allies to read the news, listen to our stories, and understand our pain. We are Americans, just like you. Thank you, Jackie, for choosing to share your story with such gentle skill and great courage, for bringing us with you to experience the moment where art and heart join in one single brush stroke. On behalf of BAFFIN and the town of Brookline, I present Jackie Gu with the 2021 BAFFIN Award for her outstanding essay, Water and Ink. Congratulations, Jackie.
Thank you very much, Alicia, and thank you, Ms. Shorter. This is a creative piece I wrote based on my personal experiences called Water and Ink. Gu Wei stared out of the frosted airplane window, her breath ever so slightly fogging it. The little carts and airport workers glided silently in the fading dusk. The lights of the city grew brighter against the darkened night sky and were soon accompanied by stars. The crinkle of static preceding the pre-flight announcement brought her out of her reverie. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome on board Flight 4B7 with service from Chicago to Shanghai. 女士们、先生们，欢迎从芝加哥到上海的4B7航班登机。Gu Wei, if the announcements were only in Mandarin, would you be able to understand them? Her father knew the answer. He asked anyway. She shook her head. No, she would not. She was not who she once was. Tugging her suitcase along, Gu Wei followed her father through the airport. She took 3 steps for every 2 of his. The air was muggy and she felt the weight of it pressed down on her head and shoulders. The monotony of the architecture closed in around her, shouting through the grayness that she was an outsider. She passed face after face, stranger after stranger. She saw everybody and nobody. They all looked like her. Sometimes she would see a glimmer of her eyes or a shadow of her jaw in the crowd. But she held no recognition for them, and they held none for her. She saw a familiar sign amidst the illegible. Her name, Gu Wei, written with dainty brushstrokes and in ink black as her hair, more gracefully than she had ever been able to with the Chinese calligraphy brushes her mother used at home. She recognized the familiar swishes and crossed lines of the 2 characters that represented her. She remembered her grandmother's gentle touch guiding her through each stroke of her name, when her hands were barely able to fit themselves around a bamboo brush, and her chin barely rose over the edge of the table that allowed her to see the rice paper she was imprinting, staining it unforgivingly and irreversibly with herself. She didn't recognize the face behind the sign. Her father made loud greetings and shared hugs while she stood awkwardly to the side. Gu Wei, acknowledge your auntie. The last time she saw you was when you were just a toddler. Ni hao, ayi, she mumbled, not knowing why she was calling a woman she did not recognize and did not know her aunt, her ayi. Do you remember me? Her ayi asked. She knew the answer. She asked anyway. No, she did not. She was not who she once was. She was once like them. Back then, she ate lychee fruit for her afternoon snack, and each time her fingers would shrivel up and turn sticky with nectarine juice. She'd pick fresh cucumbers from her grandfather's garden, marveling at their size and tenderness. She didn't yet have American cucumbers to compare them to, with their thick, dark skin and hard crispness. But as she grew older, she came to miss her grandfather's cucumbers, ripe with labor and love. She'd play made-up games with dried lima beans with her father's sisters, her true ayis. She'd paint her cousin's nails and rouge her cheeks with a 3-year-old's imprecision and heavy hand. Her grandfather would tell her stories about his childhood and his regional dialect, a dialect she used to understand and speak. But like water and ink, it evaporated. Inevitably, back to America she would go. Armed only with fluency in Mandarin, she was thrown into a whole new world, a world of mommy and daddy instead of mama and baba, of pancakes instead of red bean juk, of 26 letters instead of thousands of artfully designed characters. As she assimilated, her dark ink became dilute in the great American melting pot. Just like that, a 1.5 years of immersion in Chinese culture evaporated, like water and ink. Now she can barely greet her ayi in her native tongue. Though ink evaporates, pigment itself cannot so easily disappear. It continues to run through her hair and her eyes, coursing through her blood and every molecule of every one of her cells. Ink has memory. It leaves a trail of where it has been. It may evaporate, but it will never turn colorless. Little by little, water rehydrates the dried pigments. And as the ink courses through my veins, I know it will never allow me to forget the strokes of my name or the place I am from. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Chris?
Hi, my name is Chris Chanya-Selkett, and I am so thankful and have the honor to introduce our keynote speaker, June Lee. As you can tell from these incredible essays from our students at Brookline High School can churn out some amazing writers. So, of course, we would have ESPN's staff writer, June Lee, who is also a Brookline High School alum, as our keynote speaker. He is, I'm really kind of excited because I think it makes sense that you hear all this writing and then you can see how he's a writer. I'm just really proud and also thankful that my children are in our Brookline schools. So thank you, and thank you to our teachers. June Lee, I am so excited. He is not only from Brookline, but he has interviewed and photographed tons of sports legends. David Ortiz. I saw that he also got to interview and photograph Chloe Kim, so I'm sort of fangirling here. I'm excited, and he's written for the Washington Post, the Ringer. He's done so much, and also he has written for the Sagamore, our Brookline High School newspaper. He even had a YouTube channel in high school as well. And he is one of, says the Boston Globe's, 75 best Twitter follows for Boston sports. So I recommend everyone follow him on Twitter at June Lee. And I am just honored, and I think I look forward to hearing from him, but also I want to make sure everybody knows that in the halls of our schools in Brookline, we have these amazing, done by these great parents and BAFFIN members and parents and teachers, these huge boards that celebrate the AAPI Amazing Stars. And you can also find your own June Lee on some of these as well. So be sure to check them out. So I turn it over now to Mr. June Lee.
Thank you so much for having me tonight. That was incredibly flattering and humbling to hear you introduce me like that. Thank you, Shulan, for inviting me to speak tonight. And congratulations to everyone who was honored. It's been incredibly heartening to hear all of your stories and also hear, I think, parts of myself and my experience in each and every single one of these essays that we've all heard tonight, and just, I think, just generally knowing that there's a community of Asian Americans like this in Brookline. When I began pursuing a career in the media industry, I felt as if one of my callings in life and one of the purposes that kept me going through all of the obstacles, trials, and tribulations was to be a voice for Asian American representation, to be a voice for our community that's often felt silenced in the day-to-day binary discourse of American culture. And so when I was asked to be the keynote speaker for tonight, it felt like a culmination of a lot of work that has gone on in my life. I'm still just 25 years old, and I feel like I have a lot of life left to live and a lot of life left to learn. But when I received confirmation a few months back that I would be addressing you all over Zoom tonight, the immediate feeling that ran through my mind was panic and terror. What does a 25-year-old sports writer from Brookline have to say that could possibly help our community move forward at a time where people who look like our moms, our dads, our grandparents, the children of our community are getting attacked and killed for simply being who we are? And it's a moment that on paper I felt massively underqualified to meet the moment. And so since many of you on this call tonight might also be holding similar questions, I figured that we get to know each other a little bit. My name is Junyup Lee, born Lee Junyup. I was born in Seoul, South Korea, and I moved to the United States when I was 2 months old. My dad, Sang-kyu, came here to study for his PhD at Boston University, and my mom, an artist and art teacher in Korea, watched over me and routinely packed my lunches for school featuring bulgogi, homemade kimbaps and rice. And all of those are trendy foods in America right now. But back when I was growing up, they were considered foreign, and sometimes from ignorant peers, they were considered smelly. Our initial plan was to return to Korea, and in a completely different life timeline, my dad would be working within the corporate Korean chaebol system. I probably would have spent my nights in Seoul studying for my college entrance exams, spending late nights in study rooms and in after school academic programs. I would probably not be a writer, and I would probably be pursuing a career in corporate Korea because my parents, as they've told me themselves, likely would not have wanted me to pursue a creative career. And I would not be speaking to you all tonight, and I don't take any of that for granted. Instead, the Asian financial crisis happened, and the Korean economy collapsed, and my family decided to stay in the United States. I routinely think about how different my life would be if not for an event completely outside of my control. And it makes me realize how much of life is outside of our control and how much of our fate is left up to chance. I was a crazy kid, something my friends and my family still call me today. I used to walk around the streets of Brookline and Coolidge Corner telling stories in my head to myself. Sometimes I would pretend like I was walking around Mr. Rogers' neighborhood, or I was in Elwood City from Arthur, or on the Mount of Fenway Park, and I would pretend to throw a baseball out of nowhere while in the middle of the sidewalk, something my mom can attest to. Other times I would pretend to be Steve from Blue's Clues, and I would walk down the street with a notebook pretending as if I was talking to a TV camera. And my mom constantly asked teachers if I had ADD or ADHD because my mind was constantly wandering from place to place. And I didn't, but she kept asking just to make sure. My first Asian American role model outside of my family came in 3rd grade with my teacher, Miss Alicia Hsu, who is on this call tonight. Miss Hsu is one of my biggest heroes. I remember when I was assigned to her class, she had a reputation among the parents of Lawrence as being overly strict and rigid. And my mom seemed excited for me to be in her class, and I had never had an Asian American teacher before. That year of 3rd grade changed my life. It was the first time I confronted having a louder than normal voice that I think sometimes bothered my peers. Whenever my voice got out of control, Miss Hsu would pretend like there was a volume knob on my belly button and it would tune me down. It was the year that I discovered my love and passion for baseball, something Miss Hsu wholeheartedly encouraged. And for show and tell, when most of the class would come to present their latest toy or something from their family artifacts, I would bring in the sports page of the Boston Globe and read the headlines to the class, reading the stories written of the Red Sox games from the night before. Over the course of the next few years, I became a diehard sports fan, which is, I think, impossible to not do when you live in Boston. I followed everything and anything that I could regarding the sports teams, and something that I learned living in Boston that I didn't realize until I left the city going to college was that the city contained a unique relationship to its sports teams, more so than any other city in the United States. Sports in Boston represents the cultural fabric of the city. It's the default conversations of small talk for anyone standing at the water cooler at the office to the students waiting for class to start. And for me, becoming a knowledgeable Boston sports fan meant having something to talk about with other people on a daily basis. The first time I stuck my toe in the pool with the idea that I could potentially pursue a career in journalism came in the summer going to 8th grade. And I feel incredibly blessed that it happened that early in retrospect. By that time, I'd come to my senses that I probably wasn't ever going to get good enough at baseball to pursue a career in the major leagues. And at a summer camp I attended, one of the class options was a sports magazine class. It was a course where we basically put together a sports magazine in Microsoft Word. And I remember typing away at this page and feeling myself get into this creative flow. And I became enamored by this idea that I could one day do this for a living and get paid and write in the pages of Sports Illustrated or ESPN the magazine. But what truly made me fall in love with sports was the stories I could tell through what happened on the field. It's easy to look at sports as a meaningless game where multimillionaire athletes swing a bat or throw a football or dunk a basketball, which ultimately has no input on the direction of human civilization. But I always viewed sports as a medium to tell incredible stories of human triumph. And so much of American culture and its values, both good and bad, are reflected through sports. While many triumph heroes like Jackie Robinson as pioneers for racial injustice today, sports represented the final frontier for Black Americans to be accepted in the field of corporate America. And the ostracization of leaders like Muhammad Ali and Colin Kaepernick reflect the cultural standing of America at their moments in history. As a first-generation American, by listening to the discourse around some of the most controversial sports conversations on a daily basis, I learned a lot about the values of America, its pitfalls and its dark side, and in addition to the glory and the triumph that we typically think of when we consider the corny sports movies that color the childhood of many in this country. Thankfully, my parents, being the wonderful people that they are, supported me in my decision and my passion to pursue a career in sports media, even if they didn't really know what to make of it or how it could happen or what I need to do in order to accomplish my goals. That didn't mean I didn't face resistance. However, parents of family friends often questioned why I would want to pursue a career in sports writing in the first place. And on top of that, there weren't many faces in sports media who looked like mine. There wasn't a clear path on how to get to the position I wanted to find myself in one day. And from so many people, I always heard the idea that journalism was dying. What those people really meant was that the newspaper industry was changing and evolving and dying. But what they didn't realize was how the internet was about to change and transform the entire industry. Me, being the stubborn person that I am, mostly ignored those comments from those people who didn't understand my vision and passion for pursuing a career in sports media. And that's something that I would not have been able to do without the loving support of my parents. When I got to Brookline High School, the first thing I wanted to do was join the student newspaper, the Sagamore. Because freshmen aren't allowed to do so, I waited until my sophomore year, where I immediately felt at home. And in my free time, during the time I should have been doing my homework, I blogged for weekend ice cream money to spend in Coolidge Corner. I aggregated technology news for a small blog. I made YouTube videos on technology and iPhone cases, and I wrote about my opinions on the Red Sox. But a true moment that changed my life came near the end of my sophomore year, when I found out that my baseball teammate's dad was the sports editor at the Boston Herald. Hank Hernowitz, who you may know as the crossing guard outside the intersection of Village Fair Pizza on the way to the high school, came to practice to pick up my teammate Adam on a regular basis. And so after practice one day, I went up to him with a resume that didn't have anything on it because I was 15 years old. And I had a handful of newspaper clippings from the Sagamore, and I asked him if I could intern for the sports section. I felt like I needed to speak up in order to get what I wanted out of life. And so a few weeks later, Hank emailed me and said I could spend time with him in the Herald newsroom that summer, taking calls and helping out the editors. I ran up and down the hallway of our home in Brookline Village celebrating after that email. And I slammed my hand on the doorway because I was so excited. I spent 3 summers at the Herald, eventually spending a lot of time at Fenway Park, helping out the Red Sox beat writers collect quotes after games, and got exposure as to what a life in journalism might look like for me, and if this was really what I wanted to do with my life. While spending time in the Red Sox clubhouse, I often found myself as the only minority who worked for a media outlet, and I quickly recognized that many stories weren't being told in the mainstream media due to this lack of diversity. I always held this belief that everyone has a story that you can learn from. Does this mean I like every person? Does it mean I want to be friends with everyone? No, but I also found that everyone's journey to be fascinating in one form or another, and that there's always something to be learned from hearing another person's perspective on the world. I soon realized that what made me different and what once made me feel ostracized and floating, my Asian American identity, was exactly what could differentiate me in a sea of writers. Because of my experience as a minority outside the black and white binary of America's racial discourse, I often found that I could relate to others in the sports world who viewed their place in a similar way, whether that was immigrants or women or general underdogs who people placed doubts upon. I began to see all of these possibilities and opportunities that came in my differences. But the only way that others were going to know about this different view of the world that I possess, that Asian Americans as a whole possess, was by speaking up. Today, I possess the opportunity to share my views on the world through my work at ESPN, Baseball is a crusty industry filled with a lot of gatekeepers. It's a general boys club and a lot of people resistant to change. For many years, many of my peers in the industry shied away from conversations around race and social justice that plagued the sport, but few wanted to risk speaking up about it. So after the murder of George Floyd last year, many more minorities in baseball, players specifically, felt the urge to speak up about their experience. And as one of the only minorities on our ESPN baseball staff, I gave them a safe space to make sure their voices were heard and that their words weren't being misconstrued. A few weeks ago, I had the opportunity to speak up on a show that we do called Baseball Tonight Live on our social media channels, and had the opportunity to speak up about the Stop Asian Hate movement. I knew that given the demographics of baseball fans, that some baseball fans would probably not receive my monologue well because of the desire to keep politics out of sports, quote unquote. But our humanity is not politics. It's our loved ones, and it's our family, and it's our future families. And in the last year, Asian Americans have been confronted with this reality, that the only way that we can get others to care about us, to care about our humanity, is to speak up about our truth and our experience. Throughout so many moments throughout my upbringing, I often felt the need and desire to swallow any slights and microaggressions in regards to my cultural background. But in the last year, it's become evident that swallowing our truth and not owning our humanity, our strength, our flaws, and all means that our families, our mothers, our fathers, our grandparents could find themselves in danger. And that by not speaking up about our truths, we are putting those we love in danger. Asian Americans can no longer afford to sink into the backgrounds, to be the side characters in the lives of others, and to simply blend into the background while not making a fuss. Now is the moment for Asian Americans to make sure that our voices are heard, to make sure that we are the protagonists of our own stories and our authentic experiences. That while others may try to stuff us into the category of being a model minority, it's ultimately our choice whether or not we live our lives through that label and the views that others might hold of us. Now is the time to speak up for who you are, for everything you've been through, to own our flaws and all. Right now, we all have an opportunity to make a positive difference in each of our worlds through our circles of influence. And the first step to making that happen is to love yourself and to speak up. Thank you.
Wow. I'm no wonder you're a writer, because I was taking notes. Our humanity is not politics. Be the protagonist of your own story. Speak up. I feel like everything you resonated, I could see in other people's Zoom, that it resonated with them. But I guess I just want to call out a few things. Hank, the crossing guard, Hank? I didn't know that about him. Y'all can go visit him morning and dismissal right there in Brookline Village. What?
Yeah, Hank's one of my favorite people.
Oh my goodness. So everyone go find Hank, the crossing guard in Brookline Village, Monday through Friday at drop off and pick up. I cannot wait to find him and tell him. He is also on Twitter as well. And then I forgot to mention, because I feel like it was important, is that you're a Star Wars fan. And Karen from the steering committee noted that you have a baby Yoda on your couch.
Yes, I do.
So I have to call that out because I'm a big Disney lover. And I love that you have a baby Yoda. But then in all seriousness, there are two things that you said that I want to call out, because I can for a moment. Is you talked about Ms. Shu, Alicia Shu, and how she was your teacher, and how it was amazing that she was your teacher, that you had not had an Asian American teacher as a classroom teacher. And I need to call that out, because that is something that on the BAFFIN steering committee we have been advocating for ever, is while we love having, our Asian American teachers teaching in language classes, we want to see them also as classroom teachers in science and math and other places, so that students can see them in their teachers as well. And to hear you talk about how that was a game changer in your life, I have to call it out. Thank you. And then also how you talked about speaking up. So I am so thankful that you are our keynote speaker. Thank you. Thank you. And now I get to introduce Dr. Linus Guillory. I am, very excited and thankful that we have two such great speakers. Dr. Guillory, who many may know because he's been interviewed heavily, is our incoming Brookline Public School superintendent. And I say, sort of with a Star Wars cheekiness, that he's kind of out of this world, because if you've read a lot about him, he's literally worked and taught at NASA. So he is quite out of this world, but he has had a long tenure at NASA where he was the aerospace education program specialist. He worked at the Johnson Space Center, where he served as a program manager and a program director, doing the Teacher Fellowship Institute. He's worked, all the way from Texas to Houston to Boston, and now he will be joining us. So there is so much that I look forward to working with him on, but I want to say that something that really stuck out to all of us on our BAFFIN steering committee was that very recently our Brookline High School students, and you can see how, Brookline High School is amazing, as you can see from June Lee and these essayists, they created a vigil that they had recently at the high school with regards to all of these hate crimes against Asian Americans. And something I wanted to call out is that Dr. Linus Guillory was there, and he was there and he listened, and he came to the BAFFIN steering committee members because he's ready to work alongside us as allies. And we're very much looking forward to that. And I will turn it over now to Dr. Guillory. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris, for such a humbling introduction. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm going to begin my comments tonight by just saying, while reading these profound essays, I found that they reflected the real, authentic, lived experiences of the students. And in reflecting on the essays, a poet came to mind, Gloria Douglas Johnson, who was a prominent figure during the Harlem Renaissance. And so during my remarks tonight, I want to share two of her writings and a portion of her story with you this evening. Thank you, BAFFIN, for your work, and I'm honored that you have invited me to share in this story. Your World by Gloria Douglas Johnson. Your world is as big as you make it. I know, for I used to abide in the narrowest nest in a corner, my wings pressing close to my side. But I sighted the distant horizon where the skyline encircled the sea, and I throbbed with a burning desire to travel this immensity. I battered the cordons around me and cradled my wings on the breeze. Then I soared to the uttermost reaches with rapture, with power, with ease. Gloria Blanche Douglas Camp was born in 1880 in Atlanta, Georgia. Both of her parents were of mixed ancestry, with her mother having an African-American and Native American heritage, and her father African-American and English heritage. Camp lived for much of her childhood in Rome, Georgia, where she received her education in both Rome and Atlanta. She excelled in reading, recitations, and physical education. She also taught herself to play the violin. She developed a lifelong love of music that she expressed in her plays, which make distinct use of sacred music. She graduated from Atlanta University's Normal School in 1896. She taught school in Marietta, Georgia. In 1902, she left her teaching career to pursue her interest in music while attending Oberlin Conservatory of Music in Ohio. She wrote music from 1898 until 1959. After studying in Oberlin, Johnson returned to Atlanta, where she became an assistant principal in a public school there. So as I reflect on the writings, on the essays tonight, on June Lee's story, the words that come to mind, if I could put a wordle up in front of you, words that resonated and stuck out with me are deep roots, unity, resiliency, identity, individualism, perspective, intertwined connections, vision, courage, perseverance, truth, traditions, endurance, and voice. Throughout Johnson's life, she had written more than 200 poems, 28 plays, and 31 short stories, which is a pretty great achievement to have, especially during this period of time. In 1962, she published her last poetry book called Share My World. Throughout Share My World and all the poems inside, they reflect on love towards all people and forgiveness, which shows how much wisdom she had gained throughout her entire life. In 1965, Atlanta University presented Douglass with an honorary doctorate of literature, which praised her for all of the accomplishments she had made, and for the great woman she was and still is known as. When she died in DC in 1966, one of her sister playwrights and a former participant of the S Street Salon sat by her bedside, stroking her hand and repeating the words, "Poet Georgia Douglas Johnson." I want to these readings of what I've read to you tonight was found in a collection of works from on Douglass, so these are not all my words. The poem that I would like to close with is called Share My World by Gloria Douglas Johnson. I shall rebuild my world today without a sob or a sigh, assembling and securing it ere fleeting time deny. I shall rebuild my shattered world more wisely than before, shall fashion it with faith and prayer, and love shall be the door. And when I have rebuilt my world, uncircumscribed and free, I shall invite all humankind to share my world with me. Young people, the messages and themes that you shared in your writings tonight allowed me to enter your inner sanctum and capture a small glimpse of your experiences. After reflecting on your experiences and the Douglas's writings, I see the shared experiences and parallels. I applaud your tenacity and want to encourage you to continue doing great things to ensure that our world thrives. Thank you very much for your time and attention.
Thank you, Dr. Guillory. And now I will turn it back to Shuan.
Thank you, Chris. You know, I really miss not being with everybody tonight because I knew it was going to be moving because I had read the essays over and over. I hope they touched you too, and that you'll remember this experience, this hour and a half that you spent with us. I truly hope that next year we can do this in person. Caitlin, can you put us on a panel view so our guests could see everybody? Is that possible?
We are.
Are we all?
Yep, we're all
See
here.
you?
everybody, our guests can see everybody, our students and the whole
Yes.
BAFFIN committee?
Yes.
All right. I want to talk just a minute about BAFFIN. The steering committee of BAFFIN is, made up of about 6 of us. You know Chi-Chi, Alicia, and Chris. But I also want to introduce Linda Louie and Karen Wang and Grace Watson. We're a very, very complementary group. We love each other. Our steering committee meetings last sometimes 3.5 hours. We bring a lot of food. We feed each other. And we feed off each other, actually. We get energy from each other. Nobody, never in this group have we ever had to force anybody to volunteer, to, carry their weight. Everybody is always there to help each other, to complement each other, encourage each other, and get the work done. It's a small group. And of course, we Asian Americans, we tend to not be heard that often. But the last year has been absolutely extraordinary. And I know that the people that are here with us tonight will continue to give us the support, encouragement in everything that we would like to achieve for our students and our families in Brookline. So thank you very much. So to all of you, the best of health. Thank you very much for being with us tonight. Thank you, June. Thank you, Dr. Guillory. Thank you especially to all of our students. You're all so wonderful. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Have a wonderful evening.